I'm gonna try not to be dissociating too much to film.
You dissociate?
The hair is throwing me off a little bit. Like, I think I'm depersonalizing more than normal because the hair's not lining up with what I am expecting the hair to look like every time I glance over. Hi.
Hi.
I'm Jade, and I'm a protector in Collective Mind, and I'm here with Onyx, you can probably tell, who is not my fiance, but is still the host of Primal Pack.
Hi, I'm Onyx, and I'm a nuisance.
I'll give you that.
Oh wait, I meant nuance.
Sure, fine. I'll give you that too. So, how do I make videos?
We're making a video about gender.
Yeah, we're making a video about gender and systems because it can work differently and be more complicated, or at least differently complicated than gender already is normally. And Pride Month seemed like a good time to do it, so happy Pride Month, let's talk about gender and systems. So just like gender normally, alters genders don't have to have anything to do with the body that they're in.
Mm-hmm.
But that also means that different alters in the same system can have a different sex or gender than the body or than other alters in the same system.
Or species.
Right, like, just like all of the other ways that alters can be different from each other and the body in a system, species, age, all that stuff. Gender is one of those things. And alters who are non-human, that can sometimes complicate things because our understanding of gender as humans has a lot to do with our society that we built around humans. And so we often have a very different idea of what a specific, like, sex of a specific animal is, for instance. Like, a lot of the stereotypes that you would hear about female humans wouldn't line up with what you would hear about, like, female tigers, for instance, or dragons, or anything like that. So sometimes that can complicate gender too. It definitely does for me, because I feel a lot more comfortable with the idea of being like a female tiger, for instance, than the idea of being like a human woman, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, that's entirely fair.
So then what about non-human stuff? Is there anything
Non-human.
non-human stuff for you or that you know about from other people in your system who would be comfortable with you sharing about how being non-human can complicate their idea of their own gender?
I mean, definitely for me, because, like, wolf stuff, wolves have different mentalities, and also because of the integration with Freya, like, there's god aspects in there too, so
Yeah.
it doesn't handle the same, and especially with it being Freya and who Freya is.
Mm-hmm.
Because even though Freya is a fictive, which one's which? Like, I know fictive is like
Mm-hmm.
from a show or something like that.
I would,
Depending on your definition, fictive or
yeah.
factive.
We usually just use interject for ones like that are like in
Yeah,
the
that's
gray
the
area.
word.
Yeah.
Yeah, interject. But because of that, and like Freya being partially a goddess of sex slash fertility
Mm-hmm.
slash beauty kind of thing, like that kind of bounces back and forth to not just being stuck to the classic female or male model,
Mm-hmm.
and like especially with being able to change shape and shit,
Yeah.
its organs don't always stay the same.
Yeah. But she's
And like my opinion of myself is it technically fits better with the non-binary aspect
Mm-hmm.
because, like, if I feel like somewhat masculine, that doesn't make me not a girl
Yeah.
or somewhat feminine. Like, and the world tends to invalidate when it comes to matters like that. Of,
Mm-hmm.
oh, you're wearing feminine clothes or you're doing more feminine things, so you're
Yeah.
obviously feeling girly. So you're fluid, or they try to label
Uh-huh.
it, and it doesn't work well because labels are inherently personal and subjective to
Mm-hmm.
whatever's going on at the time.
Yeah. Another thing that just clicked is that, like, depending on species and things like that, like, you kind of brought this up with, like, gods and goddesses, is different species can have, like, more than two sexes, or less
Mm-hmm.
than two sexes, or have it be complicated and different than humans. Not that humans have only two sexes, but, like,
Yeah.
that can just function very differently depending on the species you are, especially once you get into fantasy stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So that can also complicate gender a lot because gender can already have a complicated relationship with sex, but to have an already complicated relationship with sex and then add gender on top of it, it can get very complicated very quickly
Mm-hmm.
and hard to, like, put into human terms sometimes.
Even terminology for things is already messed up
Mm-hmm.
because things are not always so binary and straight this way or that way.
Exactly. They're usually not, I would argue.
Like especially in the animal kingdom and such,
Mm-hmm.
things are not that clear cut per
Yep.
se. Because like hyenas, especially,
Mm-hmm.
are a perfect example of that. Of where if there's no males in the group for a while or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
it has been physically seen that females will transition naturally, like through their own biology. They have
Mm-hmm.
the ability to grow the male appendages or whatever,
Yep.
and their sex organs will change and they will be capable of doing those things.
Yeah.
And that completely changes just within their own thing. Like that's not with humans' help. Like
Right.
seahorses, the male is the one that carries the kids.
Yeah.
Like so
Bees
it's
is also
already
complicated.
yeah.
There's like 4
And
or 5 different sexes technically with bees, depending on how you think about it, and it can change again. Like if there isn't a queen or something happens to the queen, I think it's like one of the workers can end up becoming a
yeah.
queen, which like function like the sex organs and everything like function differently for the queen bee.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And also the I know there's like octopus or squid or stuff like that that to mate they literally dismember themselves
Mm-hmm.
and the person does it themselves
Yeah.
kind of thing. And then does that technically make them agender after that or whatever?
Right. So like this stuff gets really complicated.
Yeah, especially with animals and systems are already like how someone forms tends to be influenced by what's going on at the time.
Right.
So like for me, I got treated as not human
Yeah.
and not what the body's sex was, and I formed that way
And I was going to get
because
into that later too, of how trauma affects it.
well, I'm getting it into it now. Go rock.
All right.
Because it ties into now.
Mm-hmm.
So that in and of itself can like really fuck with your own understanding of yourself, of the basic idea of that,
Mm-hmm.
and everything else surrounding those.
Yeah. So then let's get into like how passive influence can also complicate figuring out what your own gender is, because that can be a journey that can take a while. Just like for singlets, it can take a while to figure out what your gender is because of how complicated it can be. But if on top of that, you also sometimes feel more feminine because a female alter is around, and sometimes feel more masculine because a male alter is around, or whatever other variations of gender alter you might have around, the passive influence from that can be really confusing, especially if you don't have very good communication with those alters and don't necessarily know for sure if someone is around, or if you're just suddenly feeling really masculine. Because you might then think that you're gender fluid, for instance, or whatever other... like, it might make you question your gender because you're feeling so strongly that way in that moment. But it might not be your feelings. So that can make it really hard to figure out.
Definitely. And especially, like, I was way more punk / non-binary before the fusing with Freya. And after that, I like punk / non-binary stuff, but I also like feminine stuff a lot, and that complicates those feelings more because I barely have a handle on gender as is now, let alone like adding that kind of shit to it.
And that was the next section I was going to get into, was splits and fusions and things, because it's complicated enough just like naturally growing and changing as a person over time the way everybody does. That can already complicate anything, but including gender, a lot. But if on top of that, in a system situation, you can split into 2 or more different people, or fuse 2 or more different people together, that can complicate that a lot. And I have a lot of personal experience with that, so I'm going to focus mostly on fusions because those are more recent and I've thought about them to a greater level of detail. But I am overall the result of like 4 separate fusions, or 4 separate alters fusing, but it was 3 fusions, I think. Yeah, 3 fusions. But 4 alters, functionally. Not counting, like, the person I was temporarily between the first and second fusion and the second and third fusion. So, like last year, there were 4 different alters, and through 3 separate fusions, they are all now a part of me. It's the simplest way I can say that. So, old Jade, which is the way that I simplify that because she had the same name as me, was...
Oh, Jade. Orange juice.
Sure. Was much more feminine than I am now, and very strongly identified as female with she, her pronouns and all that, and was like pretty comfortable generally with femininity, that kind of thing. Didn't really think about gender at all when I was that version of Jade. And then Kitty was little and feminine and comfortable with she, her pronouns and all of that, but had a different relationship with the idea of gender because she was a young child.
That would make it like way harder, yeah.
And Primal had been uncomfortable with she, her pronouns for a long time, and before the fusion started using they, them pronouns, but was still comfortable with some gendered terms like mom, for instance. But had, like, that had been a long journey for them to end up just like accepting and telling people that they wanted to use they them pronouns and not she her. And then Mama Bear still used she her, but was arguably the most stereotypically masculine of all of them.
Mm-hmm.
But was very comfortable with gendered terms like mom, but had fairly like stereotypically masculine association with even those terms. Like it was very much the way that you would picture an angry mother bear protecting her cubs, which is going to be associated with like mostly male stereotypes for how we think about humans, which gets back into how non-human stuff can complicate that a lot.
Mm-hmm. Honestly, Mama Bear fit the most agender for like all of the integrations, I think, simply because they did the mom thing because they were a protector slash caretaker type person, and that's the stereotypical role for it. But outside of that, they weren't like they didn't like connect sexually as far as I know with a ton of things
True, yeah.
because that wasn't part of what they thought about.
Yeah.
And like male female didn't matter. It didn't matter what someone perceived them as. Their first and only care was to be a mom and a protector. And everything outside of that just didn't matter. So that could easily fit into non-binary because it doesn't fit the quote-unquote categories of normal.
Right.
But it also just wasn't a priority to her, so that can be another thing, is alters may not necessarily have the time or ability to focus on gender and
Right.
identities like that because they could just be so busy doing other stuff
Or it
that it's
might just not
they
matter
don't
to
care.
them. Like they're
Yeah, they don't
perfectly
care, they don't have
comfortable with
time.
whatever gender they currently identify as and whatever pronouns they use, but it doesn't like matter a lot to them. I don't think
like,
Mama Bear would have really cared about being misgendered unless she was called something other than a mom. Like only in that specific context, and it would have been because that specific role was important to her, not because of the gender associations. So
like I could imagine that Mama Bear would be like would like pause for just half a second if I was little and said Mr. Mama Bear. Sir, and then they just continue.
oh yeah.
Because it'd be like, okay, that's new, whatever, don't care. And Sid's kind of the same way with it. Like, Sid usually sticks with male stuff because it's easier and it's less complicated for everyone else, but he doesn't care as much and isn't concrete on it. Because Dragon and
Yep.
especially like the source material for where he's from and stuff, it's not concrete the same way, and it's complicated.
But like
Everything about gender and identity and as a whole is complicated and a process of self-evaluation and exploration, and a lot of alters don't have that kind of time or don't want to put that kind of time into it because it's not good for them to. Like, Sid's very busy inside. They're a primary protector, and it's not that big of a deal for them.
Yeah.
Because they are more pan-romantic in that it doesn't matter what gender identity anybody else has or what sexual preferences they have. What matters to him is like what the person, like who they are as a person.
Yeah.
So identities and labels is irrelevant. What matters is who you are.
Which is helpful for
Not
me that I
what
don't have to worry
labels.
that he's gonna like not be attracted to me anymore if I figure out my gender and it's outside of like the scope that he would find attractive or whatever. But like
I'm kind of the same way because like the concept of if I marry like Aura, like we're gonna get married someday.
If
I marry, that's why
she
I was
just
trying to
almost
clarify.
switched with me.
I'm sorry. Like, okay, we get married, and then like 20 years from now, they figure out that they're a trans man. Whatever. Okay. I'm still going to know them for who they
Yeah.
are. That doesn't change. Kind of like figuring out that someone's a system and not a singlet or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the person didn't inherently change, you're just getting to know them more.
Yeah.
And there happens to be others, kind of thing. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't like being confined to one label because one label never fits. Things are not that black and white,
Yeah.
and there's not a label that encompasses both someone else and me in its entirety and feels like it fits.
Yeah.
So, fuck it. It doesn't matter.
And then there's also the component of like, it can be a lot easier if you're at all on any level comfortable with whatever people are most likely to perceive you as. So, like, if I'm in public, strangers are going to gender me female, like, basically across the board. We actually just had the first time that we were ever misgendered in public very recently, and it caught us off guard so much. It was really funny.
Mm-hmm.
But, like, pretty much across the board, strangers are going to gender us female. So, like, if I'm at all comfortable with she, her, and with identifying as female, like, it's easier to do that in most contexts because then I don't have to, like, have arguments with people. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's a convenience factor sometimes
Yep.
of, like, if it won't ruin my day to be gendered female, then, like, why would I put any energy or effort into correcting people?
Uh-huh.
Which kind of bridges into stereotypes, which we already touched on some.
But also how judgmental our society is and how much of a
Yeah.
problem it is for anybody to be quote unquote different
Mm-hmm.
and not fit what someone else's mold is or
Yeah.
what they think it should be. Because that's stupid.
But, like, the stereotypes that immediately come to mind for me, for girls versus boys, I don't like either of them. I'm uncomfortable with both categories.
Uh-huh.
Because my brain immediately goes to, like, weak, quote unquote, like, infantilized girls, or, like, overly sexualized women, as opposed to aggressive men. Like, those are the things that would immediately come to mind for me. And I don't really want to be associated with any of those.
Mm-hmm.
You know? And internalizing those stereotypes can be really, really hard to break out of that mindset sometimes. Because there's a component of, like, I would sometimes probably feel safer if people thought I was a boy. You know? There's fun things like that of, like, if I'm scared, I don't particularly want to be perceived as a girl because I want people to think I can take care of myself or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And all of those mindsets are very problematic. And I'm fully aware of that, but I'll still have those strong emotional reactions of, like, I don't really want you to be seeing me as a girl because I'm scared of you and I don't want you to, like, think you're so much stronger than me or whatever. You know?
Mm-hmm. That's perfectly understandable.
But, like, when I'm feeling safe, I want people to see me as, like, a safe person who would be nurturing and comforting for them and things like that. You know?
Mm-hmm.
So, like, I have really complicated and kind of messed up associations with both of those main human gender identity stereotype things, which it can be really hard to separate any ideas about gender from those stereotypes, like to completely separate them.
Uh-huh.
Charlie's trying to make as much noise as possible.
That is her specialty. She does like to make guest appearances in videos all the time.
You can't see her, but under this desk that's behind me in the corner, there's a dog bed, and that's where she is. And she had to dig at it a lot to make sure it would be comfortable before she laid down.
Oh yeah, she fully made a little nest back there.
Mm-hmm. She has a couple little blankets under there too. It's pretty cute. And that's where her food and water is, right next to there under the desk. It's her little cave area.
She's part bird, because she just makes nests everywhere.
Uh-huh. So the next category that I have on my little cheat sheet to make sure I don't forget anything is trauma. So that's fun.
Trauma is not fun.
No, I know. Alters can sometimes have their gender shaped by the trauma that they experienced. Especially the trauma that, like, formed them. That made them split or whatever.
Uh-huh.
Because sometimes your gender will end up aligning with however that trauma made you feel. Or sometimes the opposite. You'll, like, fight really hard against identifying as the way you were treated, basically.
Yeah.
So that can kind of go either extreme or somewhere in the middle. I'm sure there's gray area of, like, I catch myself thinking of myself that way, but I don't want to think of myself that way, so I want to identify on the other opposite end, but I probably realistically lie somewhere in the middle, or...
Mm-hmm.
So that complicates things.
You can also just have trauma about, like, your gender could be triggering to have. So, like, you don't want to be female or whatever because there's trauma about thinking about female type stuff.
Yeah.
Or every experience you've had as, like, a classical female has been traumatic.
Right.
So trying to abide by those, like, gender norms or just trying to do them in general is gonna cause flashbacks or shit like that, so you end up not doing it, but you don't think you're necessarily non-binary or whatever, but you can't do what you need or want to.
Or, like,
because of that.
If you have very, very negative experiences, especially earlier in life experiences or early on existing as yourself, as that alter in that system, if you have a lot of, like, very negative experiences with a specific gender, that might be, like, the major association that you have with that gender.
Uh-huh. Also, especially with the way the world is, and, like, especially the USA, and the southern area, it's a lot of behind the times stuff, and schools don't teach it, or you may have been homeschooled and religion doesn't let you, like, learn about it, and they refuse to teach you something that's been scientifically proven and stuff. So there could be a ton of unknown knowledge that you're operating off of about, like, the concept of gender or things about that.
Yeah.
That's just so far away. Like, in history, it was more common for men, and especially royalty, to wear high heels and, like, flowy type clothes. That was common, and especially for makeup too, like makeup and powdered wigs. That's what you think of, like, old-timey Congress George Washington stuff. And nowadays, if a boy wears makeup or something, people start mocking them, and it's like, why?
There are
Society
also
changes. It's stupid.
Some of those things not only were commonly seen with, like, the opposite gender than you would expect from today's stereotypes, but some of those things didn't used to be gendered. They were associated with something totally different, like status, like wealth.
Yeah.
Like, jewelry and makeup and stuff like that was associated with wealth, not with gender or sex. Really. So a lot of those things shift very dramatically over time, which complicates it too. For everybody, not just systems. I feel like we're getting slightly off topic, though.
Yeah, sorry.
So I'm going to bring
Let's
it back
begin.
around to age sliding.
Oh yeah, I forgot. Forgot we were
Because
talking about.
that can complicate gender stuff too, and sometimes this involves stereotypes. Because I age slide, you can see that by my name and my picture and stuff. But I feel more vulnerable when I'm little. And I associate vulnerability with femininity, which is a harmful stereotype. But I feel more comfortable with feminine labels and stuff like that generally when I'm little. But that's probably based mostly, if not entirely, on that stereotype. So, like, that stuff can get really complicated.
Mm-hmm. It's also not something like, because I age slide too, it's not something I like to focus on.
Yeah.
So, like, what gender am I when I'm little? I don't know. I don't care. I'm little.
Right.
Like, I don't care who I identify with. I'm having fun with this.
Yeah.
Or
My gender when I'm
I'm
little is
hungry.
give me a hug.
Yeah, it's not complex
Uh-huh.
adult thought processes and shit. I'm a child.
Yeah.
I don't care.
Mm-hmm.
It's more about character than anything else. Like, oh, they were mean, or we share our toys in general.
Right. A wild Charlie has appeared.
Aww.
I didn't almost pass out trying to reach over for too long to grab Charlie off the floor.
Uh-huh.
It's fine.
Yeah.
She's not looking at me like I probably need help, but she isn't fully trained on how to deal with our pot symptoms yet, so she doesn't actually know what to do.
Mm-hmm. She can sense it, but she doesn't know what to do about it.
Uh-huh. So I have just one more section left on my cheat sheet thing. Which is just basically where I have settled so far on my gender identity journey, which is first and foremost that I am very comfortable with the gendered term mom. Like that feels entirely correct to me. But at the same time, there are times where any other, like, female gendered term is gonna rub me the wrong way, but they them pronouns are always comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
But she her is usually at least neutral, if not feels kind of correct or whatever. But it definitely changes some, but I don't know how much that has to do with passive influence and, like, the way that I might be triggered in that moment. Because if I'm feeling like I need to do a lot of protecting in a situation, I'm gonna feel more masculine because I'm feeling angry and intimidating and that kind of thing, which I associate with masculinity.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think I currently identify as gender fluid, but I have thought about that a lot. But I'm not currently identifying that way, and if I were personally more comfortable with neopronouns, which I don't have any issue with anybody else using them. They don't feel comfortable to me. I don't have enough experience with them to, like, use them for myself. If I did, and if I ever get to a point where I do, that will probably be what feels the most comfortable. Because what feels the most right to me is more about, like, my species version of my gender than about any human version, and neopronouns would be able to capture that. But all of that being said, I'm doing she, they pronouns for now. And I have really complicated associations with gender that I will probably be unpacking for the rest of my life. So there's that.
Mm-hmm. I'm too dissociated and ADHD to have an agenda. So I don't have a plan.
Sounds about right.
I wanted to make the joke. I know it's stupid and it's a bad pun, but I wanted to make the joke.
You generally use she, her, but are comfortable with they, them, right?
Yes and no.
Okay.
I would still prefer she, her.
Okay.
They, them works because it's the thing most people default to.
Yeah.
And it's not he, him, so I don't fight as hard on it, but I don't like it and I would still rather be a she, her.
Okay.
I would, because I know I'm a girl.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily do all of the feminine things that other girls do all the time, and I like punk aesthetic and goth and emo and shit, but that doesn't make me not a girl.
Yeah. Makes sense. Kind of reminds
So,
me of the way that, which I do have permission to share this, the way that Snake feels about gender and pronouns is like, if you're using they, them because you don't yet know Snake's gender or pronouns, or you don't know that she's the one fronting, then she's fine with it. But if you know who she is and you know her pronouns, they, them is incorrect for her.
yeah, same. And this is, oh, I think I'm thinking about it wrong. Gender, it's definitely she, her. Because sex is she, her. So, like, sex wise, I'm a girl, and that's that.
Yeah.
I guess I haven't really thought about gender too hard, because it could technically be gender fluid between female and non-binary, because I could fit the non-binary role, but I also don't know / care enough to try and label myself like that, so I'll just stick with female.
Yeah.
Because it's easier. But, like, I don't know. I haven't done a ton of thought about it.
Makes sense to me.
Really?
Yeah.
The fuck?
So yeah, that's the quote-unquote resolution to my gender identity crisis. I'm sure there is no chance that it will dramatically change at any point in the future where I suddenly come out as non-binary or whatever. But this is what it is for now, so she, they. Yeah. So that's a little bit about some of the ways gender is complicated in systems, and some of the ways gender is complicated anyway. And a little bit about our own personal experiences with it, etc. I am not dissociating at all. It's fine.
I
am too. I was lying. I hope you like our hair. We dyed it yesterday. We like it. It keeps throwing me off. I'm not used to it yet.
It's really pretty.
It looks more pink in this lighting than it actually is.
It's like a burgundy. Is that the color?
It's like a purpley toned dark red is how I would describe it.
I thought that was burgundy, a purple
I don't
red.
know. One of those is like just kind of dark red is the way that I think about it.
I thought that was maroon.
I don't know. I don't know which is which. I can't brain right now.
See.
I hope you liked this video. I hope it was in any way helpful. I don't look forward to editing it. We've been filming for an hour, and I'm sure the final video will be quite a bit shorter than that.
I mean, there is that gigantic section at the front that got
And a bunch of sections in the middle where we are talking about how to talk about it.
Yeah.
And probably somewhere I just dissociate into space for a bit.
Same.
Thanks for watching. You can put comments and questions and all that fun stuff in comments, or come over to our Discord server. The link to that is always in all of our videos in the description box. So you can come over there. if you have ideas for future videos. Both of those places are also good for that. We're very active in both places. We read all of our comments on all of our videos, and we interact with basically all of them. And we are very, very active on Discord. So those are
Also,
both.
don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any future videos.
Yes.
And Collective's getting close to 250,
We're
is it?
very, very close to 250. Yes.
Which is the channel goal.
Yeah.
So there should be a special coming out for that as soon as you hit 250.
Yeah, we're close enough
yeah.
that we're already working on the compilation to celebrate. So if you're not subscribed and you want to see future things that we make, please subscribe. That helps us a lot.
Sub so you don't miss it. Also, comment and like the videos so it helps the YouTube algorithm.
To show it to other people, yeah.
And because you're cool.
And because it makes us feel happy. Yeah. So yeah, all those things, all the usual things, and thanks for watching. We appreciate all of you. Bye.